What is up, everyone? Brandon Ferst, aka First Report, representing the First Off the Bench podcast network. Everyone comes off the bench. We are first. Welcome into another edition of the Changeup here on the network. We break everything down at Major League Baseball has to offer. As always, my co-host is Bryanna Winner. You can find Bryanna at bwinner12. Bryanna, how you doing today?
I'm good. I got to cover some football tonight, but I'm excited because it's the first home game for this team.
Yeah, it's a little later in the week than we normally do it, but Bryanna was, of course, enjoying the sights and sounds of Chicago, Wrigley Field. Yeah, as I was working.
Some major news just came out too.
Really?
And we're good. Trevor Bauer is going to miss the remainder of the regular season and postseason.
Yeah, I felt like that would have to have come at some point. Some breaking news. Normally the news waits till right after we finish up. So thank you to those newsmakers who were able to drop it in that moment. But, you know, as I was saying, Bryanna, of course, headed to Chicago and was showing me some pictures of a fantastic day at Wrigley while I was working. It was a definite.
Oh, you were so happy though with the result.
It was, you know, thank goodness for her Cubbies to go out and get a win over the Reds. I know in the front of everybody's mind in Chicago and even the players, they all, you know, the only reason they were happy is because they helped out the Padres. I know that's exactly the case, right? But anyway, with that, it is time to dive into, of course, another edition of the Changeup. We will get to our team reports, of course, our 3 ups, 3 down, the drama that just keeps churning out in New York, but we get some Hall of Fame inductions this week. It was, of course, Derek Jeter and Larry Walker. Very interesting that they go in at the same time because they are two very different, not only players, but two very different stories of how they got to the Hall of Fame. Obviously, Derek Jeter, I think, was 1 vote shy of being a unanimous Hall of Famer, while Larry Walker had to wait. This is now his 10th year. If he wouldn't have made it, he would have been off of the ballot. And he ends up making it kind of on that last gasp. So two very different players, two very different stories of how they got to the Hall of Fame, but congratulations to both. I'm actually surprised that Larry Walker had to wait as long as he did. The Coors Field effect is apparently in full swing. And to be honest, I think we're seeing it with Todd Helton, but that's for another podcast. But Bryanna, what are your thoughts? Derek Jeter and Larry Walker both heading to the Hall of Fame.
I mean, we know that there are going to be those favorites that'll get unanimous and then everybody else has to wait. So I think that's obviously what did happen with Walker, but I mean, at least he got in on his final chance. So he can now say that he's going to be a Hall of Famer. He gets to be inducted next to Derek Jeter, who we all know was the face of the Yankees for what, over a decade?
Plus.
So I mean, they both definitely deserve it.
Yeah, I agree. And look, the Coors Field effect, Larry Walker was plenty successful in Montreal before he went to Colorado. And, there are plenty of situations where, maybe the altitude will get it done, but good hitters are good hitters. There are plenty of hitters who go to Colorado and don't hit very well. So it's not a situation where all you have to do is go to Colorado and you're just going to become this amazing, amazing hitter. But in Derek Jeter's sense, obviously there's a lot of talk about him. I would say the biggest thing that I would talk about with him is obviously that defense and that grit. He was obviously the captain of, at least in my lifetime, the most dominant baseball dynasty, those 1990s Yankees into kind of the early 2000s. And then in the early 2010s as well, when they kind of figured it out again. But for Derek Jeter, he obviously was going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. So no surprise there. But for Larry Walker, like you said, good for him to get in. I'm sure it was a long, excruciating wait. Now all eyes are going to look to next year, because I do believe it will be the final time for Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens to be inducted into the Hall of Fame, at least by the writers. So we'll see how that goes. We will also see the debut of how, Alex Rodriguez and David Ortiz will fare next year as they enter their first year on the ballot. So a lot of intrigue for next Hall of Fame class, but at least for now, it's a congratulations to Larry Walker and to Derek Jeter, two very deserving baseball players heading into Cooperstown. So good for them. Another situation that's in New York and not very good yet again. It seems like every time you talk about the Yankees and you want to segue into something bad, but stay in the same city, all you got to do is bring up those Metropolitans. And the New York Mets, obviously on the field, they've had their ups and definitely had their downs. There is news that hopefully DeGrom will be back soon. We're obviously past the Javi Baez, Francisco Lindor booing the fans situation. This comes from the front office yet again. And it is a situation where the general manager, Zach Scott, has been placed on paid leave after a DUI incident. This is a situation for the Mets. We'll get to it in a little bit, a little more in depth, but this is their second general manager who has gone pretty much been taken, his duties have been taken away from him, not because of what he's done on the field or what he's put on the field. But Bryanna, what are your thoughts on, really, it seems like the constant flurry of drama with the Mets?
I mean, you could say it's a constant flurry of drama with pretty much every team this year. Excuse me, because obviously the Angels, the Eric Kay, Dodgers with Trevor Bauer, this Seattle from the off season. I mean, this is a season of just drama. So honestly, we should just keep expecting it. Because obviously there's going to be something that's going to come out, whether we're in the middle of a podcast or not. Thank you, ESPN, for finally giving us one during the podcast and not right after. I mean, how stupid can you be?
Yeah.
That's pretty much all the words I got for this.
This day and age, 2021, no matter where you are, you're just an Uber ride away from being home. And I know, oh, hey, I don't want to leave my car there. Goodness gracious, look what it cost them. There's absolutely no excuse for it. And for someone who is paid as handsomely as this man is, there's absolutely no excuse for this to happen. And for Sandy Alderson, he's back into the general manager position. And for the Mets, obviously, like I said, we'll get to it in a little bit, but this is just another situation where a general manager has done something. I don't want to turn it into a, measuring stick, but just done something incredibly boneheaded, and has put this team kind of into the drama. But I agree with you, Bryanna. It seems like every team, or at least half of the league, has had a lot of drama off the field, and none other, of course, than those Dodgers with, of course, like you said, the news finally breaking during a podcast. It's pretty crazy. We just had to delay it for 2 days. But anyways, with that, it is time to step into the winner's circle. I know how some of this is going to go because I've had my eye on the Angels for the last couple days with, of course, them being against the Padres, but she's going to get us all caught up on everything that is going on with the Halos. Bryanna, the floor is yours.
I mean, look, they're 6-4 in their last 10, which is good, but they're not leaving fourth. There's no way they are going to overtake the A's. And honestly, we will talk about Seattle in a bit, but obviously after last week's podcast, they were facing the New York Yankees. They lost to the Yankees 4-1. Going into the following series, they went 2-2 against the Rangers. So on Friday, they won 3-2. Ohtani did go 0 for 4 hitting, and he has been struggling quite a bit, but he did pitch that game. He went 7 innings, gave up 7 hits, 2 runs, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts, but he also pitched 117 pitches. I mean, that's a lot for most people, and he was able to do it just fine. On Saturday, they won 4-1. Ohtani did go 2 for 4, and he had his 43rd home run, which is an MLB high. This is probably the only time he was going to get anything like this in the week, because, again, he is just struggling, and obviously he could not play versus the Padres because they were in a National League park. Jose Suarez pitched a complete game in this 4-1 4-1 win. He pitched the whole 9 innings, gave up 5 hits, 1 run, no walks, and 8 strikeouts. And Sunday, they lost 7-3. All of their runs came from the 2 Joe Adele home runs. And Adele did go 3 for 3. He did have an infield single later on in the game. But again, Joe Adele, the person that struggled all last year when he got brought up, is just doing so well this year to replace Mike Trout, who was on the injured list still. I mean, congrats to Adele for getting past those nerves from last year. On Monday, they lost 4-0. I am not going to go into that game because there was nothing significant that happened. So going into the Padres series, which obviously will be talked about again later, both teams won a game. So Angels won 4-0 on Tuesday. Adele did break it open with a single in the 7th inning. And look, props to Blake Snell for his pitching in that game. Just sorry you couldn't get it done. Sorry, Brandon.
I'll have my own little soapbox for that one as well.
I know. So Rengifo homered in the game, and Adele hit a sac ground out. And it was a pitching battle. Just ultimately, the Angels were able to overtake Blake Snell. Was Snell taken out of the game before he should have been, or
no? No.
So it wasn't a repeat of the World Series.
No, was not the repeat of pulling him in a no-hitter. No, he went as long as he actually, I believe, was with 2 outs in the 7th, still had a perfect game going. He then walked someone, and then I want to say maybe walked another or hit someone, but then a base hit eventually. The first hit of the game, I believe, made it 2-0. As if I can remember it correctly, but no, he was not pulled early, like he was the start before in Arizona.
Okay. So Wednesday, obviously, Angels lost 8-5. Lagares and Adele each had 2-run home runs. Look, the pitching struggled, and the starter only went like an inning and a third, and that just told you it was a bullpen game from there. I don't think Mayers is a starting pitcher anyway, so I think it was a bullpen game to start. My guess is because they wanted to save Ohtani for today. So obviously today is Friday the 10th. They will face the Astros today through Sunday. Ohtani is scheduled to pitch in the first game of the series. Please, Ohtani, hit. We need you to get out of your slump in this series. And I know both of us want this.
Yes.
And then Tuesday through Thursday, they will be facing the White Sox after a day off. And then they have the A's next weekend. So it's going to be a very interesting week for the Angels. There's no way they're going to get into third place.
Yeah, it's the Mariners have stayed consistent enough. And the Angels have somewhat as well. I think it's perfect microcosm for both of our teams that I pretty much knew after what the Angels did on, I believe it was that Tuesday.
Yep.
Right. Tuesday, the situation that, you know what, they're going to probably, they're going to win on, the Padres are going to win on Wednesday, because this is just 2 teams that they're probably going to go 5-5, 6-4, 4-6, pretty much for the next 10 games the rest of the year, because that's just kind of how the teams are. They're not going to go on big time winning streaks, but they're not going to go on big time losing streaks either, which is fine. But at least in the Angels sense, that's not going to be good enough to make the playoffs. In the Padres sense, who knows if it is going to be good enough. Currently, the Padres are 1 game up on the Cincinnati Reds for the final wild card spot. If the playoffs ended today, it would be the Padres in Chavez Ravine to face the Los Angeles Dodgers. And look, as a Padre fan, there are absolutely no illusion. I have no illusions. It would, if I got my choice of which team to face in the 1-game playoff, either the Dodgers or the Giants, 11 times out of 10, it's the Dodgers, because the Padres cannot beat the Dodgers in a best of 5. They cannot. They're not going to be able to beat the Dodgers 3 games before losing 3 games. It's just not going to happen. In 1 game, anything can happen in 1 game. And then if they do get past the Dodgers, I do think the Padres would be okay in a best of 5 against the Giants. Now, none of those really possibilities are probable. They're possible, though. Now, making the playoffs it's going to depend on what happens really over the next 10 days, folks. The Padres begin a road trip right now where they will start in LA tonight through Sunday. Then they will hop on a plane and head up to San Francisco, play 4 games against the Giants Monday through Thursday. And then Friday through Sunday, they will be in St. Louis to face the Cardinals, another team that is right on the heels of not only the Padres, but the Reds as well. As I pull up the standings to just make sure I have it correct. Yeah, the Cardinals are 3 games behind the Padres. But once again, a lot can change over the next week when you're talking about the Padres playing 7 games against the Dodgers and Giants. It's going to be very, very difficult to see this team kind of go 4-6 or 5-5 over these 10 games and think that they'll still be in a playoff spot, because the Reds are going to, have some easier teams. Even the Phillies are coming on strong. So the Padres need to they know they control their own destiny. However, their road through the rest of the year is going to be very difficult. I think this 10-game stretch right now will determine whether or not the Padres make the playoffs or not. When it's all said and done through these 10 games, if they are still in playoff positioning, I think they will make the playoffs. But if they are not, then it will be another year, for at least another full baseball year without postseason baseball for the Padres. Now, going back to Blake Snell, this is a guy, obviously a lot of expectations coming into San Diego. Gave up a lot to get him. We all remember, of course, the Game 6 situation. And really going back a few years before that, the Cy Young Award for Blake Snell, where he had something of a 1.8 ERA in the American League, which is almost unheard of. And it's been a tough road for Blake. I've been very critical of him. I think most people in San Diego have been very critical of him for good reason. We're not sitting here sticking knives in scarecrows. That's kind of what you sign up for. It could be a lot worse. You could be in Philadelphia. You could be in New York, and that market eats you alive. But here in San Diego, he's struggled. And then the firing of Larry Rothschild, with most people figured that Blake Snell was not a fan of Larry Rothschild and really kind of hurt his development. Well, since then, Blake Snell has been on fire. We go back, they played Oakland on July 28th. That was obviously about 6 weeks ago. He gave up 7 runs in 4 innings. Since then, he has gone at least 5 innings and has not allowed more than 3 runs in any point or any parts of those games, has had more strikeouts than innings pitched in every single start. In his last 3 starts, this is just absolutely incredible. His last 3 starts, he's gone at least 7 innings. It's totaled 21 2/3 innings. He's allowed 4 hits in 21 2/3 innings and only 8 total base runners. That's a whip of 0.38. So he has been on absolute fire since the firing of Larry Rothschild. Now, is it too little too late for the Padres? Maybe, maybe not. They're going to obviously need this. And if he continues pitching like this, I think the Padres can look at that situation and go, we have our ace. We have the guy we can feel good about in a 1-game wild card, because he has been absolutely lights out. Even in the loss we talked about with to Anaheim, he was dominant. He had a perfect game going through 6 2/3, struggled to get that 21st out, but he got the job done. The offense did not pick him up. He struck out 11 in 7 innings. Going back to August 8th, he had 13 strikeouts in 7 innings, and in his last 3 performances has had double-digit in strikeouts. So he has really turned a corner. Whether it's the firing of Larry Rothschild, whether it's just him kind of settling in, we probably will never know. But at the end of the day, the Padres have found someone that they can rely on every 5th day, at least for the moment. We shall see how that goes from here on out, because the competition is going to get a little stiffer. With all due respect to Oakland, there was a really good start against the Dodgers, but there's 3 starts against Arizona in those 7 starts that I talked about that were so good. I don't think I have to tell anybody about how bad Arizona is. So the competition is going to ratchet up over these next 3 weeks. But if Blake Snell can keep firing the way he has been, the Padres should be in pretty good shape every fifth day. And like I said, if they do have to play in that one game wild card, or if they do get the opportunity, I should say, to play in that one game wild card, I think Blake Snell is the one who gets the ball right now. But there's a lot of baseball left. It's obviously a marathon that is coming into essentially the last half mile. And that's what the Major League Baseball season is doing right now. And this is a time when the who's up, or the 3 up, 3 down. This is when you want to be on one side, but not the other. Obviously, you want to be on the upswing. And for this week, it is Bryanna's turn to do the up. So Bryanna, who is the first up of the week?
Well, to be fair, this was an easy one. Look, they overtook the A's. They are now in second behind the Astros in the American League West. It is going to be the Seattle Mariners, who are 7-3 in their last 10. We are finally seeing what they should have been doing all along after what happened in the offseason. A fire got lit under them, and they are rolling with it.
Yeah, it's a great story. I mean, unless, the Angels, or in this case, the A's that are now trying to fight them off to get into the playoff. The Seattle Mariners have been a team, once again, shout out to our loyal listener, Tim Chad. He's been somebody that he talked about the Mariners being good in the next few years. I think he actually said 2022. I said a little longer than that. He was definitely closer to the mark than I was. Now, at the same time, I don't think this is a team right now that makes too much noise in the playoffs. Could totally be wrong, because right now this is when you need to be playing your best baseball. And really, that's what's going on with the Seattle Mariners. They're 12 games over 500. They're 5.5 games back of the Houston Astros. My biggest concern, though, is that negative 53 run differential. I think that's one of the biggest kind of signs of what a team overall makeup looks like. But this is a team that's been very quietly sticking around, and now not only sticking around, but they're starting to kind of make moves on people. And for the Seattle Mariners, and that fan base, good for them. This is a team that I obviously they had A-Rod and Griffey and Randy Johnson and Edgar Martinez, and didn't get a championship out of that, and then had that fantastic team. I think it was maybe in 2000 or 2002 in that Ichiro time, with Kaz Suzuki and all those guys, when they had won like 118 games and then got swept in the first round. That's kind of a tormented franchise. So for them to be getting some at least hope in that sense, that's fantastic. Hopefully next they'll be able to get their basketball team back, but that's another story there. So the first down of the week, those were my responsibilities, and it is to my pleasure. Unfortunately, I mean, I'll I don't want to say dance on the grave of the Cincinnati Reds, because
you were dancing on Monday when I was telling you.
Well, I was dancing, but once again, it's like dancing on around somebody who's been hurt really badly. Like, it's in bad taste. But like I said, they're not dead just yet. They have lost. They're 3-7 in their last 10. They have, like I said, dropped a game behind the Padres. And the St. Louis Cardinals, only 3 games back, and the Philadelphia Phillies, only 3.5 games back, are threatening to overtake them as well. So the Cincinnati Reds, this is a team, I think eventually this was going to happen. I think if you talk to most Padre fans, they're not worried about the Reds. They're worried about the Cardinals, because the biggest thing about the Reds is they can hit, but they're going to have to score 8 runs a game, because that pitching staff is god awful. Luis Castillo has taken 3 or 4 steps back in his development as a major league starter. While the team can absolutely mash, they cannot get people out consistently. And that's a situation I think that's starting to come back and bite them. And we're starting to see that now. But what are your thoughts on the Cincinnati Reds?
Now, see, I didn't see them being able to mash the ball. I saw none of it. The only home run in that game came from Ian Happ of the Cubs in the the bottom of the first inning. And I know as soon as I said that, you were so happy. But look, Sonny Gray actually did pretty well. It was just the Cubs were just having an on day. But once both the starting pitchers came out, it was a battle to see who was going to break the tie at 3. And again, it was just fun getting to hear the Go Cubs go. song at the end and getting to see the W fly. But I mean, look, the Reds lost 2 of 3 to the Cubs. There's no way the Cubs are even making the playoffs, but like all of their core are gone. They got traded. They're not there. You shouldn't have lost. Although, to my enjoyment, they did.
Yes.
Because I actually got to see a Cubs win in person. So I was very happy.
Good. Yeah, it worked out for everyone on the podcast. Bryanna had a great time, got to see her Cubs win. Padres got a little bit of a cushion. And, it's a situation with the Reds where they've built that team around how that ballpark plays. It's a very hitter-friendly ballpark. And we'll see if that continues to kind of hamper them, or if they can figure it all out. And, because like I said, they're only a game back right now. They've really been struggling 100%, but they're only a game back.
The fun thing, Joey Votto came up at bat at the end of the game. As soon as he started walking to the batter's box, all you heard was boo. Just everybody kept booing because we all know what Joey Votto can do. And thankfully he lined out to center field to end the game. But again, it was so fun.
Yeah. Well, as Reggie Jackson said, they don't boo nobodies. I've always felt that is the biggest compliment you can give a baseball player, is booing the hell out of them.
Would you have booed Votto if you saw him come up to end the game trying to tie it again?
But it's different because the Reds aren't my rival. I like Joey Votto. And I think most Cubs fans probably do like Joey Votto as well, but I'm sure there are plenty of bad memories they've had of Joey Votto hitting bombs off of them. And, I'm sure Joey Votto has hit plenty of bombs off the Padres, but for me, the boos are Max Muncy, the guys like that, maybe in Cincinnati or at least in Chicago, Max Muncy isn't booed, but in San Diego and San Francisco, he is. I think it is a regional thing. Once again, the Reds don't, piss me off. Like even right now, they're just kind of that team in the Midwest that the Padres need to do better than. And then obviously, I think it's kind of how the Cubs look at like the Giants or the Rockies. They're a team out west as opposed to the Padres, who look at those two teams as a team you're going to play 19 times a year, and you're going to end up hating them by the end of it.
There are a lot of Reds fans. This game. And outside, someone was buying something like across the street, and they were talking about how like the Reds were going to make the playoffs. And my dad just goes and says, "Hey, you're a game behind. You're like a game behind the Padres now." And they're like, "Really?" We're like, "Yes."
Oh, yeah.
No, just the reaction of the Reds fan, and then the reaction of the guy that was selling the stuff. He was so happy when we did that because he was like, "Oh, shots fired."
Yep, he knows. But what is our second up of the week, Bryanna?
The second up is going to be the Boston Red Sox, who have overtaken the Yankees for second place once again in the American League East. Look, they're 5-5 in their last 10. We thought they weren't going to do this well, but considering what they've done all year, congrats to them. Now, are they going to overtake Tampa? Probably not. Because what they did in those last 2 months is just Boston could not recover from it. But we'll see if Boston is able to make the playoffs in a wild card spot.
Yeah, that American League East, that American League wild card is getting pretty crazy. Toronto, of course, I think just finished up a sweep against the next team we're going to talk about, and they're down. And they're only a half game back. I mean, you look at Boston, who right now would host the American League wild card. They're only a game and a half ahead of those Toronto Blue Jays. Both Seattle and Oakland are only 2 games back, and then you get a little lower down. But the Boston Red Sox have seemed to go on runs where they're going to be on the upside of our list for 2 weeks, and then they'll be on the downside of this list for 2 weeks, and kind of flip-flop back and forth. That's how they've pretty much been all year. And now it's starting to kind of catch up to them. Now they have to stay consistent because there is a ton of teams that are chasing them, and a lot of very good teams, a lot of very hot teams. So one thing the Padres do have going for them is the Cincinnati Reds. Look, they're on the downside of this list for good reason. That's not the case with a lot of the teams in the American League wildcard picture, even though, the A's have struggled, I know, but Seattle's a team on the rise. Toronto, it might be the hottest team in all of baseball. So it's a perfect little segue into our second down of the week. And it is, of course, the New York Yankees.
It's why I put it where it was.
Huh?
It's why I put it where it was.
Yep, exactly. And it's a perfect situation for Yankee haters to kind of point out that, hey, you might have been a team that won 11 or 12 in a row, and then now you've gone 2-8. This is their second, I think, 4 or 5+ game losing streak in the last 2 weeks. They have fallen all the way out of essentially a playoff spot. They're only a half game up on the Blue Jays, who just swept them. So the New York Yankees, with only a +34 run differential, have to be worried now. It's not the injuries. I thought it would be the injuries that came and got him. That's not the case. It's just been the big time inconsistent play and a situation where this team got hot and then sputtered out. But Bryanna, what are your thoughts on the New York Yankees?
I mean, look, they're on a 6-game losing streak, and I'm all for it.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure both of us are all for this. We don't want to see the Yankees go back to where they were in the early 2000s. Although it would be nice to see them beat the Astros. I'll take Yankees over Astros any day. That's for you, my Yankees friends. You will never hear me say it again.
We got it on tape, though, so it's all good.
I know, but they will never hear me say it in person. I'm not going to give them that satisfaction.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult, I think, for the Yankees, even if they do make it into that wild card game. I will say, for the sport of baseball, it would be a lot of fun to see a 1-game wild card playoff between the Yankees and the Red Sox. I can only imagine the atmosphere in those stadiums if that does become the case. But the Toronto and the Blue Jays and A's and Mariners definitely want to have something to say about that. But Bryanna, what is our final up of the week?
You're going to be a little happy about this one. The final up for the week is going to be the Giants. They did take Ferst back from the Los Angeles Dodgers, both to our amusement. They are 6-4 in the last 10. They are currently on a 4-game win streak. Look, I'd rather have the Giants over the Dodgers win the National League West. So I'm happy for this. I'm sure you are too, even though it's not your Padres, but it's at least not the Dodgers.
Amen. And as I kind of talked about earlier, look, if you're going to get a chance to beat the Dodgers in a playoff game or series, whatever, the shorter, the better. And a 1 game, like I said, I would much rather face the Dodgers than the Giants. Now, I'm not saying it's probable, once again, that the Padres win, but, I put it at like 25-30% that the Padres win a 1-game playoff. I put it around 5% if the Padres had to play it in a best of 5. And then in a best of 7, it's around 2 or 3%, at least is the way the team is built right now. So in a 1-game playoff, give me the Dodgers all the time. So for that to happen, it's of course going to have to be the Giants winning the division. And that's awesome. I don't hate the Giants. I mean, obviously, hopefully, ideally the Padres play the Giants in the division series. And then I'll hate them, but they're not the rivalry that, we have with the Dodgers. And it's kind of a feel-good story for a lot of those. I like Buster Posey. I've always liked Brandon Belt. Brandon Crawford's always been one of my favorite Padre or non-Padre players. And they're all obviously putting it together at, the old age of baseball or whatever, late 30s. And then guys like Kevin Gausman, people like that who have, really, really figured it out for their career. But for the Padres, they have to worry now about making the wild card. And for the Dodgers, they have to figure out a way they can run down the Giants because they're done with the Giants. They don't play anymore. And the Giants actually won the season series, something I think the Dodgers probably did not expect to happen. But it's going to be a hell of a run down to the stretch here in the National League West. It's going to be very interesting to see who can take it. But our final down of the week is a little unorthodox. We talked a bit about it earlier, but over the last 9 months, the down has been the New York Mets GM position. This is now the second GM. We've already talked about it earlier with Zach Scott leaving the team, placed on paid leave because of his DUI incident. We had, of course, earlier in the year, the GM who started the year as the general manager was essentially kicked out of the league and fired for sexual harassment allegations. So essentially, look, in the last 9 months, it's kind of been like, in Spinal Tap, where that, I think it's the drummer who, they go through like 25 drummers because they keep dying. It's kind of like that with the New York Mets general managers. They just cannot hold the position down. So is it cursed? Are the Mets cursed overall? I don't think so. I just think there are two really boneheaded people that have been put into this position. But it was kind of fun to make a little fun of the situation. But Bryanna, what are your thoughts on really what's been the ridiculousness of the Mets general manager position over the last 9 months?
I mean, to be fair, the general manager position all over has been like crazy the last like 9 months, if you look at like Seattle as well. So it's something to expect at this point, especially from the Mets, but you guys should know better.
Yeah, definitely something to expect from the Mets. This is it's when it rains it pours type situation for this franchise. It's always been that way. There's really no doubt about it. But it's unfortunate, we don't like to make light of the fact, get a ride home, be responsible. My goodness, like I said, it's 2021. You are 2 clicks away from an Uber. And as I've always said, if you can afford to go out and get plastered, you can afford an Uber home. So we'll see how that goes. Obviously, the Mets really need to do a deep dive into, because I can't see him coming back. I know he pled not guilty, but that's probably for posterity's sake. So we'll see how that goes if the New York Mets bring in, a general manager that can hold down the job for longer than, 4 or 5 months. We'll see if that's the case. But that's all we have for you here on this edition of the Changeup. Bryanna, any final thoughts?
Giants, just keep doing what you're doing and keep the Dodgers in a wild card.
Yeah. It's that's hopefully going to be the case. I think, like I said, unless you're a Dodger fan, you are definitely hoping the Giants can get the job done there. I think a scrappier team and a team that you would definitely want to see in the playoffs over the Dodgers, at least if you're a neutral in the situation. So that will hopefully be the case here in the next couple of weeks. But this is the sprint now. Everyone kind of got themselves into position. Now it's to sprint to the finish, see if it's good enough at the end to make the playoffs. And then that season begins. And eventually we'll get to a point where we're going to crown a champion. Will it be a new one? Hopefully. I don't think either one of us wanted Dodgers to do it again. Even at least on my side, if the Astros have to do it. I know Bryanna is not the case there, but
I don't want either of them.
That. Yeah, I know. We'll deal with that if we get there. That might be a week where we just have to take a couple weeks and tell you to refer to someone else on those. But anyways, that is all we have for you today on the Changeup, presented by the First Off the Bench Podcast Network. Everyone comes off the bench, but we are first. It is time for you all to go wash your hands and stop hating everybody. We'll talk to you all very soon. Take care.